Okay, welcome to Chapter 31 in the Practices book. It's about documentation, page 551. So look, right off the bat, nobody really likes to write documentation, okay? And so, to help them along, kind of remind them when they first got here, in your organization, say, didn't you need an awful lot of help? Didn't have somebody explain how things work? Didn't that documentation help you? And they go, well, yeah, okay, it did. So, you just have to constantly remind them this is important. So, basically, let's talk about the reasons why. The first would be self-help. I want to provide answers to customers so they don't have to ask. That would be one categorization or reason for doing documentation, right? Another one is, I don't really like doing this particular task, so I want my junior person to do it. Basically, if I've got a shitty job that needs to be done, but I don't want to, then I go grab the junior guy and say, here's a set of instructions, please go do this. Okay, so it's the burden is no longer yours. And then, I've seen people who, were really nervous when it comes time to take a vacation. They're gone for a week. They're the lead system administrator, and they're leaving everyone behind and, turning off their phone, so to speak, and they're kind of nervous. Yeah, well, you need good documentation so the people you leave behind don't panic and don't screw things up. Produce a list of the things that you typically do in a week and have them do that. Okay, it's even more pressing if you've got a senior system administrator who's getting ready to retire. Oh man, like the last week that they work for you, just don't have them do any real work. Just have them sit down and write documentation. All the lessons learned, all the procedures, do it all. Because knowledge redundancy is important. You don't want to have just one person know how to do something. Okay. Knowledge is power, but lack of knowledge means you can't go on vacation. So let me tell you a crazy story. This is an honest-to-God true story. It's crazy as heck, but I think you'll enjoy it. All right. So 10 million years ago, I'm writing an application in assembly language on this machine. And every time I would show up, I had to go to the supervisor's office and get the programming book off the shelf. And she kept her office locked and the file cabinet locked. So I had to basically go to her and say, hey man, I need to borrow the book again. And so she would, unlock the cabinet and give me the book. I'd go sit down and do my thing. This went on for days. And so finally I went, why do you keep the books locked up? And she said, oh, well, I don't want any of my employees to know more than I do. Really? Wow. That's the exact opposite of what we're talking about here. I want my employees to know as much or more than I do. So what to document? Document everything? Well, of course not. On page 552. So they say something that's complicated or unpleasant. What I say, it's complicated or risky. So anything that's complicated or risky to do, I want to have a good set of documentation. So, perhaps a process has a particular checklist you have to go through, a lot of steps. Maybe the order of the steps is critically important. You have to do this first before you do that one. And so this checklist is kind of, follow the checklist. By the way, the aviation industry, they've got this, right? You're going through landing procedures. They have a checklist. Make sure you got this. Make sure you got that. And you get 2 people involved, right? Not just one. I mean, yeah, they got it all figured out. So documentation means you can give an unpleasant task to a junior person. Woohoo! And, just basically you hire somebody to do the things that you don't want to do. I mean, same thing at home. I mean, if you live in a house, do you mow your own grass? Well, maybe. Or do you hire the neighbor kid, right? If you don't like mowing grass, perhaps the answer is you hire it out. Okay, templates on page 553. So, if it's some sort of documentation, it ought to have like a title or some metadata, which means metadata could be like who wrote it and when, the who, what, when, where, and definitely the why. You don't want to just explain, here are the steps. Okay, let's say you have a nuclear power plant and you got somebody who's going through the shutdown procedure and it says, well, you turn this knob until the needle goes to 40 and then you push this button. And they're doing it because it says so to do it. And then, I don't know, some sort of emergency. And they said, oh, quick, we need to shut down the reactor. And the guy says, okay, So he turns this knob and waits till it goes to 40. And the guy says, why are you waiting? He says, well, it hasn't gone to 40. He says, that's under normal circumstances. Why don't you push the button now? And he goes, well, I have no idea why I'm waiting. I don't know what will happen if I push that button before it gets to 40. No one has ever explained it. So don't give them just the checklist. Maybe you ought to have 2 documents. One explains why in quite some detail. And then the second one is like a summary checklist of what to follow. They read this like once, and then they follow the checklist every single time. Because they need to know why, not just blindly following some goofy checklist. Okay, quality assurance. I will tell you, I am a horrible proofreader. I cannot proofread my own work. I can't do it. If I misspelled a word or have some grammar problem, my brain just skips right over that. So for example, when I write quizzes, I get my wife to proofread my quizzes because she's never seen it before. And she goes, well, that's grammar is incorrect, or that's spelling, or, no, great, because I can't do it. So having quality control, quality assurance is probably good. Make sure that everyone really does understand the set of instructions. And in some cases, you can use a lot of jargon, because you are talking about another system administrator doing the work, right? So yeah, you could say RAM rather than random access memory. You could use, abbreviations and jargon. But have someone else look at the instructions and follow it. So the first time, let's say I have a set of instructions for, installing Server 2019 in a virtual environment. Give that to someone and watch them do it. And pay attention to whenever they say, well, what do I do next? Or what does this mean? Okay, so have a dry run and have someone follow your set of instructions and see what they can see, okay? And that's why you probably should have like a quick version of it and a long version. One explains the philosophy and why you're doing this and what the options are. And then, here's the best practices on how to do it the best. Easy sources, page 554. So screenshots, just like in your assignments, if you bring up something like a configuration screen, do a screenshot, put that in your documentation. Easy, we're done. All I have to do is just look it on the screen, look on the set of instructions and go, yep, that looks the same to me. That's easy documentation. Command lines. There is a way you can capture the file, but quite frankly, most of the time I just, copy and paste the, once I got the command line written down, I'm absolutely certain that it works, no typos or anything, I'll light it up and go paste it in my instructions. You guys have seen this, right? Particularly on the hands-on part. Like the DISM command, that was an awful lot of typing. And so, yeah, I made sure it worked before I copied and pasted it. Okay, good. Perhaps an email chain. For example, I actually have archived versions of emails that go back years. Now, I keep them in what's called a personal storage file, so they don't consume an awful lot of resources. But I had an opportunity not too long ago where somebody was talking about, hey, we're having trouble installing Microsoft Project in the classroom. And I go, wait a minute now, back in 2018, we solved this by doing this. And then last year, when we installed it in this room, here's what we did. And so I had all that information. I had an email chain which served as documentation that I could provide them saying, okay, I know you guys are probably, same people weren't around in 2018, but this is how we solved it then. Okay, good. Okay. A trouble ticket. So, submitting a trouble ticket, you could end up with, a database of solutions. Every time this happens, you have to do this. Some people call this a knowledge base. Kind of cool. There are automated systems out there that'll do this for you. That you can download a piece of software that basically has this really cool knowledge base. It allows indexing and searching and, makes it incredibly easy to operate. Error logs. So, you need to go look at the error logs to see, when this occurs, this is how it manifests itself in the error log. It's not necessarily going to tell you what the problem is, or I'm sorry, what the solution is, but it's definitely going to help you describe the problem. Okay, let's go back to the example of I'm running out of space for my log files. So I get a thing saying, hey man, my log file is full. And I go, oh, okay, got it. The power of checklist, page 556. So, the task to prepare a new hire. Do you think your HR people have this? Yeah, they have a checklist. The task to terminate an employee. Do they have a checklist? I certainly hope so, particularly if it's somebody who has administrator rights. Okay. The installation of an operating system. Yeah, I got a checklist for that. How to do offsite storage, what's allowed and what's not. Yeah, got a checklist for that. Security configurations. Oh, big time. I want to make sure you're doing this right. You know, go by the numbers, make sure everything is set exactly right. And so setting up a shared directory, this is kind of sort of like the scenario I was talking about, a knowledge base on page 557. So have a descriptive, if you did not use a knowledge base, you just had a file share, you dump stuff, have the file name incredibly obvious. The example they talked about is reason why printer P32 fails. That's a very good descriptive title, isn't it? If you were looking in there, you'd go, oh, okay, that's what's going on. Click on it. Okay, a wiki system. So wiki system is a website that basically is a website that can be edited by people. So this is the one I use a lot, pinvoke.net. If you're a developer and you want to know how one particular API is working, you could go in here and say, okay, for example, I have a trouble with, I don't know, I'm just going to click on this guy. So I want to know how to do a certification find certificate store. And so they're going to basically tell me, here's the signatures if I'm writing this in C# or in VB. And here's an example to look at. And it's really kind of cool. And here's the documentation. And then it even says, please edit this page. Yes, if you've got a tip, you've got a better example, or perhaps you have some other things. This is what it's all about. So I go in here a lot and edit things. I'm a prolific editor on pinvoke.net, where I throw in examples, I throw in corrections where somebody said, well, I think this does this. And I go, no, not really. Okay. So the point behind this is an ordinary user. Now, I'll confess, the first time you do one of these, it's probably going to go to some moderator who's going to check it out. But once you've done it like a gazillion times, they're going to take one look at your name and go, okay, no problem. I'm not going to bother to look at it. Boom, approve. Okay, so it kind of works. Findability, that's cool. I need some sort of full text search. That's kind of what this guy does too. Maybe I don't even know what DLL it is. All I know is I can just type a search thing in here. So let's say, for example, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Let's do encrypt. And then, okay, here's a list of the, here's from this particular API, from that particular API, and here's another one from another API, blah, 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 blah. Tons and tons and tons. So you need to be able to search things. That kind of makes sense. Wiki-style search engine. Perhaps if you were doing this yourself without a wiki, maybe you just need to have like a table of contents, like a listing of all the things, maybe have hyperlinks in the table of contents. It could be like a Word document. And have a hyperlink that would go to the actual document. You could kind of see them all. That'd be kind of good. Rollout. On page 559, there are going to be some people that are going to say, no, man, we don't need no dang wiki, or we don't need no dang, knowledge-based system. That's just dumb. Because there's an awful lot of resistance out there. People just don't like change. So there are some barriers to success. Recent changes area would be one way. If I can't force you to go here, right? I can't. But what I could do is, every time there's a significant change, I send an email out saying, hey, there's some significant change on the wiki page. You might want to go look. Now, I could be nice to them and send them the changes. But quite frankly, I'm trying to break them of that habit. So I would most likely just send them a link saying, hey, we made some changes in policy here on how to do encryption. And you need to go to the wiki and find it. That would be one way of doing it. Okay. Another one, kind of sort of similar to this, but not really. It's called a content management system, a CMS, on page 560. But doggone it, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark, so it can wait till then.